Hi, this is Boone Slot Car Garage. Let's do this. Hi, I'm Boone, and this is Boone Slot Car Garage. And tonight we're going to go ahead and do something a little different. Actually, we're going to do something very different. Something that hasn't been done before. And what am I talking about? You're probably saying to yourself, what is he talking about? Well, if you saw my last video, which is this one right there, which is the completion of the tunnel project, where we went ahead and I finished off the mountain and I put a bunch of happy trees on it and some bushes and dolled it all up. And then I finished the mine shaft, and to kind of top everything off, we went ahead and got a bunch of billboards from Racetrack Scenics and put those on it. Yeah, that video right there. At the end of that video, when I do my recap and everything else, as far as what I built and everything else on that video, at the end of the video on that recap, I may mention that my next video was going to be something completely different. Well, that's this video right here. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, what does he mean he's going to do something completely different? Well, we're going to do something completely different. And what I mean by that is, well, let's see here. I stand here in front of my collection of slot cars, right? And some of you guys have noticed the cars that are sitting behind me. You may have mentioned to certain cars. Well, if you notice on the wall, there's a blank spot, right? Right over there. There's a blank spot. There's two cars that are missing. So yes, if you know what that is, you know what those cars were, then you know the car that I'm talking about. If you don't, well, now you know that we're going to be doing a video on a slot car, right? So let me go ahead and let me grab that car. So what we have here, and I actually have two of them, for this video that we're doing tonight. So let me go ahead and set this one down. And what this is, if you've been living under a rock, you may not know anything about this car. If you're part of the slot car community, you know exactly what car that is. And what this is a newer release from Slotted, and it's a 1970 Ferrari 512M. But this car, it's not only just that, it was the car that raced in the 1971 24 Hours at Daytona. Yes, with Sunoco Penske, all right? So this car right here. So you're probably going, okay, he's got a slot car, so we're doing a review, right, Boone? You'd have never done a review video. No, not doing a review video. So we're not doing a review, and we're not doing a tuning video. So we are doing a video with a car. All right. So let's just go ahead and let me go ahead and throw my 10 cents out there, right? So a lot of times we as hobbyists and everything else, or collectors or anything else, we purchase cars because we like them, right? We like the car. It's a Ferrari. I like the car. And there's some of us that purchase certain cars because we know the history of that car, right? Yes, they're a toy car, but this isn't just a regular 512M. This one was the Sunoco Penske 512M that raced in the 71, 24 Hours of Daytona. Yes. Did it win the race? No, it did not win the race. In fact, this car never won a single race in its history, professional history. So if it never won a race and everything else, why would you have that car? Well, cars are iconic. And one of the reasons why I got into slot cars wasn't the fact that I love doing scenery and stuff like that and building all that. It had to do with the cars, right? It had to do with the cars that were running around. Because if I didn't care about cars, then I might as well just go ahead and do trains or something along those lines. But cars are a big part of my life. So the cars are what drew me into slot cars. Now, one of the things that I have noticed in the past and everything else is that when guys do reviews or something like that, they bring out the car, they show you the car, who manufactured the car and everything else, but they don't give you the history of the car. Because every one of these cars that's up on the shelf, if it has an actual livery, has a story and a history behind that car. There's a reason why a slot manufacturer decided to create that car, right? So one of the things that I always told myself that I was going to do if I ever did a car video is that I was going to share the history of the car, what made this car so iconic. So that's one thing. Okay, so that's coming up. But another thing on top of that is this car, right? So when I first saw that Slotted was going to release this car, I was very excited because it is a beautiful car. In real life, it is an actual beautiful car. I believe that the owner of it now actually lives in Canada, and he comes down to the States, and you can see it at some of the vintage races and stuff. It is actually ran. So it's a beautiful car. But that wasn't what stood out in my head. Now, it's kind of ironic that Slotted decides to build this car, which is actually kind of a no-brainer because it's a great car. But they chose the 1971 Daytona 24 Hours. Now, why is that iconic? It didn't win the race, right? But why is that iconic? Well, for me, this car showed up to the track looking like this and probably looked just as shiny and spit polished as this car is, because Penske is so anal that way that it was always said that you could eat off any part of the car. They were that clean. And it qualified looking like this. And it started the race looking like this. But around 12 midnight, something happened to this car, and it didn't look like this for the remainder of the race. Now, some of you that might know the history of this car and everything else are now starting to realize what I have planned for this car. And you're going, you're going to do that? Are you really? Yes, that is exactly what I'm going to do to this car. And guess what? I haven't seen anyone else do it. So that is what we're going to do. But before we go ahead and I get started with this car on what we're going to do, I want to share a history of this car, right? I don't want to share the history of what makes this car iconic, what makes it stand out. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a little break. And I'm going to show you guys a video, and it's the history of chassis number 1040. All right? Let's do this. Penske Sunoco 1970 Ferrari 512M, a car that changed the sport racing world on how a car should be prepared, even though it can also be said that this car can be considered one of the most unlucky racing cars in the 1970s, plagued by uncontrollable circumstances. Chassis number 1040 started its life not on the long-distance circuits of Europe, but on the short sport racing tracks in the US, racing 3 events in the 1970 Can-Am Racing Series, campaigned by Chris Cord and Steve Earle and driven by Jim Adams and Bob Bondurant. This red number 76 Ferrari only finished 1 race in the Can-Am season and never placed above 7th. The car was then purchased by Kirk White and Roger Penske, and thus began the transformation of chassis 1040 to be massaged into the iconic car that we know today. Penske set off first by shaving weight, replacing the aluminum body structure with that of a fiberglass shell. The 512 was then fitted with a large whale tail rear wing, increasing the downforce and improving upon the lateral grip. The Ferrari's V12 was then sent to Traco, the same guys who helped Carroll Shelby rethink the GT40 power plant. Traco then meticulously massaged the Ferrari V12 and found an additional 40 horsepower, bringing the total horsepower to 468, making the Sunoco 512M the largest horsepower of any of the 512Ms. But Penske wasn't done. He then attacked the rest of the car, improving upon Ferrari's design. He attacked the suspension geometry and put his own twist and thought and genius into the rest of the car. And to put his final Roger Penske stamp on the Ferrari, he painted it Sunoco blue. Now that the Ferrari was ready for competition, she just needed the talent behind the wheel. That talent was delivered by Mark Donohue and David Hobbs, and the lead mechanic was given to that of John Wood. In 1971, this was a dream team. But unfortunately, this is where Lady Luck would abandon the Penske team. Roger entered the team in 4 races for the 71 season: the 24 Hours of Daytona, the 12 Hours of Sebring, the 24 Hours Le Mans, and finally back to the States to compete in the Watkins Glen 6 Hour. Out of the 4 races, the team would only finish 2 races in the 71 season. The debut race for the Penske Sunoco Ferrari 512M was the 24 Hours of Daytona. With the high-speed bank turns with speeds in excess of 200 miles an hour, Mark Donohue was able to put the 512M on pole. And for the first half of the race, everything was going as planned. But just before midnight, a shunt involving Vic Elford in his Porsche 917 and Charles Perry in his 911S would find Mark in the middle of the wrong place at the wrong time. The Ferrari would take on significant damage, but able to limp itself back to the pits. And under the direction of John Wood, they would take 60 minutes to duct tape the car back together to re-enter the race, only to find themselves deep within the field. For the remaining 12 hours, Donohue and Hobbs would turn the fastest laps of any of the cars on the track in a car covered in duct tape, and fight themselves from deep within the field to a 3rd place finish. The second race was the Sebring 12 Hour, and again Lady Luck would not be with the Sunoco team today. Mark behind the wheel of Ferrari, and Pedro Rodriguez driving a Gulf Porsche 917 would have a heated disagreement upon the circuit. It is said that in one lap, Pedro took his 917 and rammed the back of the 512 3 separate times. Conveniently away from the photographer's cameras, there's no photo record of exactly what transpired between these 2 drivers. But when the cars came back around to the line, they were both into the pits to make repairs, unfortunately taking the Ferrari out of winning contention, and they were only able to scrape together a 6th place finish for the day. The 3rd race would be the 24 Hours Le Mans, and again, misfortune struck the Sunoco team. On Saturday evening, the Ferrari was struck with engine failure, and thus unable to complete the 24 hours. The 4th race would find the team back in the States at the Watkins Glen 6 Hour, but bad luck would strike on the 54th lap while leading the race, with the Ferrari suffering from a broken steering knuckle, which would end its racing for the event and conclude a schedule plagued with misfortune. But this was not the last time that the Sunoco Ferrari would compete in professional competition. Despite all the misfortune of the 1971 season for the Sunoco Penske team, this story remains one of the most important racing stories of the 1970s. At a time in racing history that racing teams paid very little attention to spit polish and a hyper attention to fine details, Roger Penske raised the bar. Remove the bad luck that plagued the team. The insistence on excellence that Penske demanded would have paid off. So much so that other top teams took notice and quickly realized that they would need to raise their own expectations to that of Penske if they hoped to compete successfully in the future. And this brings us back to the very last professional race for the Sunoco Ferrari. Penske had the team put the car back together for one last race. At Watkins Glen, there was a race weekend. On Saturday was the 6-hour endurance race for the sports cars, and on Sunday was the professional Can-Am race. Penske had the team put the car back together and race one last professional race in Can-Am. I find it ironic. Chassis number 1040 didn't start its life on the tracks of Europe, racing endurance races. It started in the United States, racing on shorter circuits in Can-Am. Penske then purchases the car, prepares the car, and puts it where it was designed to be. Through a season of misfortune and lady luck not being with the Penske team, the car ends its professional racing career, not in Europe, not in the endurance races, but back in the United States, back on the shorter circuits, back in Can-Am. An ironic ending for an iconic car. All right, so there we go. Now we know a little bit more about this little car right here, chassis 1040. And like I said earlier, every one of these cars, if it has an actual livery to it, has a story that goes behind it. And I thought it was really cool. Researching this to do this little voiceover clip and everything, there were some things that I found out about the car that I didn't realize. I had not a clue that it started out in Can-Am. I never actually gave it much thought. I always just kind of identified to this car right here and just kind of went right from there. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, again, every car has a story. So now what we need to do is go ahead and start making this car look like it did at the end of that fateful night in '71 during the Daytona 24. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting video, right? So saying all that, let's go ahead and get ourselves a cup of joe, maybe a donut, and let's do this. All right, so here we are, and I have my victim right here. But before we go ahead and start on this project, I need to go ahead and give a shout out thank you to Alan Smith, who owns 132slotcar.us. And reason why I'm doing this is because Alan was a gentleman that I was able to purchase these cars through. And Alan's a really good guy, and he's been in the hobby and the industry for years. A vast wealth of knowledge. But if you've never gone over to 132 Slot Car, I really suggest going over there, checking out his website, and seeing what he has. He's an importer for Revo slot, for BRM, and I believe even Scale Auto. and yeah, just go over there and take a look. And if you do talk to Alan, actually, if you call, there's a good chance that Alan's going to be answering the phone. So if you go ahead and give him a call and everything else, just let him know that Boone sent you over there. And yeah, why not, right? So thank you to Alan. And again, go check out 132slotcar.us. And when we come back, let's go ahead and start getting into our project. Okay, so we're back, and let's do a little bit of research as far as what we need to do to make this car look like it did in 71. Now, perfect way to do this, if you are going to maybe do this exact car, or maybe there's another car, maybe a 917 or something like that you want to go ahead and replicate as far as damage, or maybe you want to weather the car or something like that. Thank goodness for the internet. So what I did here is I went ahead and typed in 1971 Sunoco Ferrari Daytona 24 hours, and it pops up all sorts of different photos. Now, this car, I've already gone through and I put together a huge collection of pictures on this. In fact, I started putting together pictures on this car as soon as I found out that it was being released. Because I already had this sick idea in the back of my head that I was toying with this idea. I've been toying with this idea for a long time. So I'm kind of excited to finally be able to do it. But one thing that I did notice about the car, if we go ahead and let me click on this, is if we look here in the front, it's actually missing this side of the front spoiler, the front nose. So pretty much from this side, it looks like let's see here. So it has the sections right here, but from this, keep on doing that, it comes up. But from this little guy right here over, it busted all that off, And remember, when Penske got a hold of this car, he went ahead and rebodied it in fiberglass. So that's why this area down in here busted off, because it was no longer aluminum, it was actually fiberglass. So there's little things like that you need to go ahead and take a look at, that you to identify to go ahead and do this type of project. So we have damage that's down in here. Plus, if we go back, one thing that I did notice, and I'll click on this picture right here, is on the side of the car, it actually dented in this whole entire section through here. So we've got a few little manipulations we got to do to this car to get it to look like it did in 71, right? So looks like we're gonna have to bust off the lower. Yep, that's right, bust it off. And we're gonna have to melt the side of this car and crush it in so it looks like it got hit by a car. I can't believe I'm doing this to this car, but this is gonna be fun. All right, so now that we kind of went through our pictures on what we need to do to this thing, now it's time to start molesting this to look like it did in 71. So we come back, let's start doing it. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get with it, right? So I have the car, I have my Dremel, and I have my Sharpie. The reason for the Sharpie is that I was looking at the picture, and what I want to do is make sure that I get this arch through this corner over here. So I took my Sharpie, went ahead and kind of outlined the area that I want to go ahead and cut out. So it looks like this car took some serious damage right up here in the front. In this area through here, this whole entire corner up to the wheel well right in here was missing, just big old chunk missing out of it. And then it came down in the front, in the right side of the front splitter or front air dam was busted off right in here and just had a little chunk hanging down in this corner. So what I need to do is yard all that material out. So I was thinking about trying to do it with like maybe some wire snips and maybe coming back with an X-Acto knife. But I think the best way to do it is just to take the Dremel and not think about what I'm doing to this car and just go ahead and do it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and shut off the camera while I do this because this thing is a little loud. Yeah, so once it starts grinding, it'll be very loud. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and do that, and we come back, we'll see what we got. Now, you'll realize I still have the chassis bolted on the bottom of it. I haven't taken the body off, and the reason for that is if we go right down here, okay, you can see that this area down in here in the chassis comes right up flush with the body. Well, in order to kind of get the look that I need to yard this corner out as well. So there's nothing up here per se. It's just pretty much a filler up in this part of the chassis. So what I'm going to do is pretty much grind back, and I'll probably have to grind back into this as well so we get that look. So we come back, it won't look the same in the front. I can guarantee that. All right, so there we go. There's the picture of the car, and here's the car. So what I did was I went ahead and I was able to buzz this all out. So I got that opened up through here, and I was able to open up this area around the side too. So kind of gives it that same look. And if you look at the car here, you can see where it's open in there, and then it has a big old chunk missing out of that corner. So able to replicate that. And then also I'll show you the bottom of it on the chassis. So I was able to grind it back in here as well, so that when it's sitting on the track, I'll put it on the stand here, you don't see that chassis hanging down. Okay, so that helps, right? So now we don't have that chassis down there. We got two open holes. Now what we need to do is go ahead and dent the side of this thing. So I noticed on the pictures that this side through here was caved in. Now, I know that the upper portion of this, Penske went ahead and replaced it with the fiberglass shell, but the actual chassis was still, you know, still the aluminum chassis that was down here. So this aluminum panel was pushed in. So now I need to go ahead and try to replicate that. So again, I'm going to leave it bolted to the chassis, and I'm just going to have to heat this up and try to push it in, try to distort these body lines through here. So I'm hoping that I don't fry this thing, because we got these decals or these tempos on here, and I'm not sure how well they're going to take the heat. But I think if I bring this up to temperature slowly with my heat gun, I can work this. So I have my heat gun ready, and yeah. So next step is that I actually might, you know, I'm gonna pull the tires off this thing. I don't want to do that, and I might actually, yeah, I'm gonna pull the tires off. Let's do that off this one side. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some tape. So we come back. Yeah, I'll show you what I'm gonna do in order to try to protect some of this car before I put the heat to it. Okay, so if we got a different picture up. So if we look on this side right here, right down by the numbers, it has a crease that goes right in that lower area. So it looks like it came in contact down here and actually bent this side cladding on the chassis. So what I need to do, and I have my aluminum tape. So this stuff's pretty cool. It's kind of a heat resistant type of tape. You can picked this up at a hardware store or whatever, and it's more or less, it's like a aluminum flashing tape. So try to put this down to protect the heat from the other areas. I don't want to distort my clear plastic or anything else. I'm just interested in you know, destroying this lower part. So what I'm going to do is take my heat gun and I'm going to slowly warm this up and try to push this down just so I can distort this lower area down here. And hopefully it goes well. I know that the slotted bodies are actually kind of a thicker plastic, so I don't know if that's going to be a benefit or if it's going to be a hindrance, but I will find out here in about 5 minutes. So let me go ahead and put the heat to this bad boy, and we come back, we'll see what I came up with. Okay, so I went ahead and I put some heat to it. It actually shrunk up a little bit more in the front than I wanted it to, but I was able to get it to relax a little bit. But we got that to kind of distort, so if we look down the side, we can see kind of a little bit of body damage that's there. And the actual car was it wasn't extreme, it was kind of slight, so able to kind of get that to look that way. You can see on the other side where it's nice and flat. This side definitely has some issues. So there we go. We got that done. Now, I've got to look at this a little bit more, but I think all our body damage per se is done at this point. Now I need to do is go ahead and I'm going to get the body off the chassis, and when we come back, we'll see what our next step is going to be. All right. So I have the chassis, or the body, off the chassis, and I went ahead and popped the interior out because I found a photo of the car, and if you look inside here, it's all silver on the one side. So they didn't have another seat sitting next to them in the cockpit. It looks like they yarded the seat out, and the seat, it looks like this is Donahue driving right now, but on the underside of him, you don't see any red, it's black. So he had a black seat and he did not have a red seat next to him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start to kind of detail out the interior a little bit. I want to obviously change this red that he's sitting on, this seat, and change this to black, obviously around in this area, and then paint this out silver to match the interior on that side. And at the same time, I might come in and do a little more work on him as well. It looks like he was, you know, it all depends. For myself, I'm gonna go ahead and give him the dark goggles on here, more or less like the daylight driving instead of the nighttime driving. So I'm go ahead and do that. Yeah. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of detailing with the interior here, and then I can come back to the body and start to figure out the weathering process on this. Okay, now that we have Mark looking a little bit more like Mark in the cockpit of this thing, got some white on his visor and did a little bit of trim work, gave him some black gloves and got rid of the red. Now what we need to do, now that he's all complete, looks a little bit more like that, so we'll set him down. Now we need to start worrying about our body, and this thing is still way too shiny and not weathered enough to represent this. Now, I noticed on the photos that, you got to remember, this car went through quite a bit of racing before the accident happened. So what we need to do is go ahead and start weathering before we start adding the duct tape. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and study this a little bit more and figure it all out. Now, a lot of times when you weather, here, let's see here, let's grab this. We have our windshield wiper here, and you go ahead and you make, you know, an area up here where it looks like the windshield wiper's been moving. Well, at Daytona, it did not rain during this race. So you can see that his windscreen doesn't have any windshield wiper. It's pretty much clear. Now, in between on the pit stops and stuff, they would come in, wash off, you know, the window and stuff. But if you look down here on the sides, you can see where there's a little bit of grime where they didn't quite get it. So what we need to do is go ahead and tape this off in a way that it's going to look like, you know, someone kind of scrubbed it with a rag. And then also here on the sides, we kind of need to do the same thing. So we need to go ahead and mask that off first. And then, yeah, then we need to start getting the airbrush out and figuring out how we're going to go ahead and do this exactly. Okay, so I have my front windscreen masked off, and you notice I didn't come all the way down. Kind of left a little bit of shadowing around the edge, and down in this area, it's not exactly smooth, right? So, because when they're wiping with a rag, you know, they're not going to get everything just perfect. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Now, the side windows, I decided not to go ahead and mask off. And what I'm going to do is when I airbrush this, I'm going to get myself a Q-tip, you know, an ear swab, and go ahead and clean these windows off in such a way that it will kind of mimic that. But I figured that would be a little bit easier way to do it than try to mask this off and, you know, like I did with the front windshield. Front windshield a little bit easier, it's bigger. The sides, yeah, it was a little bit difficult trying to get something masked off just right where I was happy with it. So I thought, okay, we'll do the Q-tip option. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that on those. Now, what we need to do now is, if you notice this side over here, this area of silver, I've noticed on some of the pictures that it was ripped off, okay? So it was just blue that was underneath it. So what we need to do now is go ahead and remove this. So this body looks like it is, well, they casted it in a blue plastic, all right? So what I'm hoping, fingers crossed, is that what I can do is take a little bit of thinner or mineral spirits and wipe this off to get rid of that. So I'm gonna go ahead and try that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get a little bit of some type of thinner and see if I can wipe this off next. And then what we need to do after all that is to go around and kind of start to weather out some of these other areas. If you notice, the Goodyear on top of the fenders is almost non-existent. You know, it's just a little bit left. So this is kind of the little things, the details of going around, studying your pictures, and just kind of taking care of some of these things. So we have the Goodyear up in here. So we're definitely going to have to do something with those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get some mineral spirits and some Q-tips, and we come back, we'll start to wipe this down a little bit. Okay, so I went ahead and I got that wiped off down there. What I used was just goof off. This stuff is great. I mean, it came off really quick. I'll show you, because I didn't do the Goodyear decals that are on top of the fenders. So what I have is just a little Q-tip here, and this stuff, I don't know, it works great, but just got to be a little careful with it, because it did work pretty quick. So let's start with this guy over here. So it looks like a good majority of this is gone. So what I'll do is I'll just bring it up and we'll just wipe it. And you just see how that just comes right off. So we're gonna take it down to about there and just kind of wipe it through. We just want a little bit of this showing. So there we go. So we've got it to that point right there, which is pretty close to actual what the picture looks like. Now this other side, it looks like the middle right here was taken out. So we'll just kind of swab that a little bit. You know, we got it to that point. And it looks like we're missing the G completely. We'll take that out, and then we'll kind of work our way over just a little bit. And there we go. Now there's a little bit of residue on there, so I'm going to get a new Q-tip and just kind of do a little bit more cleanup on it. So yeah, this stuff works, like I said, it works real quick. So you just got to kind of, you know, don't hold it down too long in those areas, because it's going to probably take off more than you want to, that's for sure. It's definitely taking kind of the surface shininess out of that body. You can kind of see a little bit, it's kind of smudged it down a little bit. So I'll go ahead and clean this all up. And what we need to do next is some of the weathering down here in the front, where it kind of got sandblasted by the debris on the track. So we can see that. Now, remember, this car originally was red, but they put a fiberglass shell on this, but that almost looks like, that must be the gel coat, you know, that they use down in this area. I'm not quite sure, but it has kind of a brownish, reddish tint to it. So I have some of this right here, which is called cocoa bean, and it's an acrylic. And I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of brush work down here on the lower when we come back. So yeah, let's go ahead and we'll start doing our weathering as far as brushing when we come back. All right, so went ahead and I got that stuff removed and cleaned up a little bit. Now what I'm doing again is I'm taking some of that acrylic by Deco Art. This is kind of it's a nice acrylic, and called cocoa bean, which kind of has a little bit of a reddish tinge to the brown. And this might be from down in Florida. They have kind of a there's kind of a red clay soil that's down there. So this might actually be just a little bit of mud and stuff that was down at the lower part of the car. But the color is great. It looks really good. I mean, I don't know if you can see that down there, but yeah, it mimics it real well. So I'm just taking a detail brush, and we're just gonna kind of hit this just a little bit. And down in that area, there's some areas of blue that kind of came through. So I'm just going to go ahead and tap this to create kind of a peppered look. And let's see here. Let me hit this a little bit stronger down in there. Looks like my screen. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But let's see here. Let me hit this a little bit more, and then I'll show you guys. Oh, let's see here if it gets in focus there. But you can kind of see that kind of tinge, and it looks a lot like our picture there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of work this around a little bit more. Looks like it kind of goes up on top just a little bit up in here. So just kind of tap that just a little bit, give it a little bit of grime up in that area. And looks, you know, a lot of this is going to be covered up with duct tape, obviously. But, you know, you just got to do it in layers, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of check out the rest of my pictures, see if how far this wraps around on the side. And we come back, we'll start doing some of this other brush work up on top. Looks like we got some chips to do. I'm sure there's a little bit of rubber up in there we need to take care of. So yeah, so let me go ahead and do this, and come back. We'll take it to the next step. Okay, so now I have the brown done. I did a little bit more up here in the nose to kind of tarnish it down, a little bit around the sides, a little bit on the back wing, you know, the air release on the back ducts here, and just kind of, you know, a little bit little bit here and there, you know, just kind of looking where that would be flowing over the car. So now it looks like we need to go ahead and get some white chips going on the front of this. So I'm just taking another acrylic, and this is my infamous antique white. And what I'm going to do is with a fine tip brush, and if you notice the end of this, well, let's see here. I don't know if you can actually see that, but the end I've teased out a little bit, so it's a little bit rough, okay? It has a little bit different strands coming off. It's not coming to a point. So with that, what I'm going to do is just kind of lightly tap it on here. Now the numbers themselves have some chipping into it, so just kind of tap it here and there. It looks like we have a kind of a chunk over here, you know, and just kind of give it a little bit of wear. And just kind of tap it with your finger once in a while if you want to tone it down. And yeah, so I'm going to go around here and now just kind of hit little places here and there, and you can see how it really pops on that blue. So being as such, we want to be a little cautious with what we decide to do here, because it's gonna show up. So always with weathering, especially when you're doing this, just start out light and kind of work your way into it, because to try to reverse it, that's kind of tough. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of keep on playing around with this and see what type of mess that I can create. Okay, so now I have that. Lastly, what I want to do is now come in with a little bit of black. So just using an acrylic black, and I need to, now remember, black is really strong, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in my brush, but then it's almost like a dry brush effect is what we're doing, so we don't overpower certain things. So I'm just coming in with a little bit of black, and we're just going to hit some of these areas, and it'll just kind of tone it down a little bit and give it just a little bit of grime in certain areas, like our number down in here. And this will mimic not only a little bit of grime, but it'll, you know, some rubber that maybe was on the track or something like that. So we can kind of hit it on some of the headlight areas here. That actually looks pretty good. So just kind of do that. We want to build up maybe a little bit around the wheel wells down in here. So, and again, my brush is frayed at the end. It's not at a point. So what happens is, well, let me see here. On the silver, you'll be able to tell. And when I hit it, it kind of creates a speckled pattern to it. Okay? So we're just tapping it ever so lightly. Use your finger, kind of blot it around a little bit. And whoop, that was a little powerful, but we can blend that out a little bit, make it look like some grime there. And yeah, just a little bit here and there. Don't want to forget about the decals that are on it, and just kind of hit it like so. Now also you can mimic some grease or something along those lines. So especially in your air ducts and that type of stuff. So we can take this, and since it is frayed, it'll create little strands coming off of it. And then we can hit that back just like so, and just gives it a little bit more detail. So we can kind of make this air intake look like it was running a little rich. So there's that. I want to put some down in these scoops down in here. Can't believe I'm doing this over the top of this, but it'll be cool when it's done, right? So there we go. Do that. And then cool thing also is that with black you can create a little bit of shadowing, so it makes things look like they have a little bit more depth. So yeah, just like so. I'm going to get some on the side of this, down in here, a little bit of grime. Same thing down in here. We got these air ports down here that for the intake, so just kind of dirty it up a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit more of this around, and we're almost at the point now where we need to get out that airbrush and give it that last little oomph to complete the ensemble. But before we do that, we're missing one major thing, and that's duct tape. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do a little bit more with the black, and now it's time to cover this thing in the infamous duct tape that it's famous for. Okay, so now that we have our body pretty much weathered up with our brush techniques, now what we need to do is go ahead and wrap this thing in duct tape. So what I've decided to use for duct tape is automotive pinstriping tape. And this stuff's great. It comes in multiple different colors, and the adhesion on it is phenomenal. If you can pinstripe a car and it can be outside in the elements, I think it's good enough for our little cars too. And it's very thin, so it's not going to be, you know, out of place. It's actually going to lay real nice upon the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and use this. This is just it's a metallic silver. They call it argent metallic, and it's kind of a darker, kind of a dirty silver. Okay, so a lot like duct tape. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and get this out, and I'll show you the first couple strands as far as how this stuff goes on. Okay, so let me show you guys this. Now, this is vinyl pinstriping tape, automotive. Now, you notice that it has a backing right here for the sticky side of the tape, and you'll notice that there's a clear cover over the top, right? So what this is made for is that you can go ahead and lay it out on a car, you peel it off this side, and you have this protective film over the top as it holds these two stripes together. So you can go ahead and adjust it and everything else, get it all laid out. And then once it's laid out correctly, you peel the clear portion off of it, and it sets it into place. That way then you don't have, you know, this clear over the top. It's two individual stripes, okay? Now, what you do with this is, you can see I've already kind of played with it a little bit and brought some off. But if you peel this back, okay, you'll notice that you can get one to stay on the film and one to stay on the actual paper, the protectant paper for the adhesive. Now, so we can go ahead and pull this back. Let me pull this back as such. And now we have the stripe on the paper, okay? Now, this stuff is kind of temperamental as far as it's very brittle, okay? So once you take it off of this paper, it's real easy to break. You can see all these little fragments right here. And it's real easy to stretch too. So just kind of keep that in mind. So what we want to do, obviously, is mimic our duct tape on the car. Now, I've already done a little bit on the front of it to kind of give you an idea of what it looks like. But this is really cool stuff. So say you are not doing this, but you want to go ahead and maybe add some duct tape over the top of your headlights. You know how some of them would duct tape over the top? Well, this is great stuff to use for that. So let me just go ahead and show you how it looks when it's on there. And I mean, yeah, that's really cool. It looks like duct tape, right? So what we're gonna do is, let me go ahead and bring up my computer again, but we have this tape across the nose. Now, I'm using the smaller of the two, which I believe is, oh shoot, it's 5/16. Is that what the size is? Yeah. So 7.9 millimeter and 12.19, well, that's meter. So I'm not sure what the actual size of the smaller one is. I forget. It's been a while since I pinstriped a car with this stuff, but you can find this. It's the dual. Dual tape. Okay, so pretty self-explanatory. If you go into an auto parts store, you can find this stuff. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and I'll just lay out one of these strands. So I've already laid out these guys right here, but I need to go ahead and lay out across this side. So I'm not gonna do the whole entire thing with you guys on the video because it's a process. It takes a little while. So I'm gonna go ahead and just peel this up. So I have it like so. And let me go ahead and I'm gonna tear off this paper and make it easier. Okay, so now I have it that way. Now if you have it on the paper like this, it's a lot easier to handle than the stripe individually. So using the backing plate, now we can do is get this lined up in here. Okay, so I'm gonna try to do this on camera. I've been doing this in my lap. It's a little bit easier in my lap than up here. But let's see here. Get it like so. Bring it down. Okay, so there we go at that point. And I'll just lay this out. Now go ahead and take your X-Acto knife. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put my X-Acto knife on here. And I've got to set this down, guys, to get a clean cut. So I'm just gonna set this down and then pull the tape up onto it. Come on. There we go. So there's that. And now I have another piece of duct tape on the car. So I'm just gonna go ahead and push this down just a little bit. Okay, I can move it around a little bit if I need to. So move this like so. Whoops, came off. And like I said, this is a tedious operation. So we have it there. Let's go ahead and tuck it through the grill. Okay, so it's through the grill. And since it's vinyl, it will take shape, but you have to apply pressure. So once we got it here, let's go ahead and fish this down in. I'll use my X-Acto knife to go ahead and apply pressure to create a crease. And then once it's down inside here, I can bring it backside over and press it down into the underside of the body. Probably the same way they did it. They probably wrapped it right up inside the body skin to keep it all together when it was going around the track. So, and there we go. We've got some duct tape, or what you want to call 200-mile-an-hour tape, right? So I've got a lot of duct taping to do on this. Obviously, it took a whole entire team of guys 60 minutes, an hour to duct tape this car. It might take me a little bit more than just an hour to duct tape this car. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep on doing this. And when we come back, it'll be covered in duct tape. Okay, so here it is, and she is covered in duct tape. If you look at the picture in the car, it's pretty cool. So let me go ahead and I'll show you guys this. So you can see how that tape it works perfect for it, really. Now, I went ahead and got this all. I'm sorry guys, but my microphone went off. I just noticed this while I'm editing. But what I'm going over is that I'm showing you how it looks. I mean, it looks just like duct tape. It's really cool. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over the top of this with a black acrylic. And I'm going to do a dry brush effect just on the pinstriping. And what this is going to do is it's going to kind of make a little bit of a grunge effect, but also at the same time, it's going to kind of go into the edges of the tape and give it a little bit of definition. So it's going to pop when you see it. So without the acrylic paint on it, it kind of washes out. It looks, you know, it your eye doesn't quite catch it because the material is so thin. So if you go ahead and you do a dry brush effect on the top of the tape, it actually, you can see it. It starts to kind of bring it out. You can see the layers, and it's really cool. So if you're going to do this, I highly suggest coming back over the top with a black acrylic, or you could even use the like a dark brown if you wanted to. The black works great, and you can see I'm using my finger to kind of smear it around a little bit, and yeah, it well, you'll see, but it really turns out really cool. So sorry about the inconvenience. It's I'll have to keep an eye on my battery from my microphone in the future, but here we go. And I'm sure I think the next clip my battery is okay. So hopefully I only have to do this once in this video. All right, I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so now it's time to get the airbrush out, and let's just give this thing a little bit of shading. So what I'm using again is just an acrylic, and it's called Bittersweet, and it's kind of a muddy brown color, which works perfect thinking that this was racing down in Florida, right? So it's a lot of dust and everything else onto the track, and this reduced out pretty thin, which I have it reduced out quite a ways. All we're looking for is just kind of a light kiss of haziness onto the car. So what I've got here is I just have my little mixture, so I'll just go ahead and put this in here. Whoop, I'm spilling it. There we go. That's all I need. So, and I have pretty much the consistency of water. So just reduced out quite a ways. So that's just, yep, and I got color coming through. And one thing about airbrushing, if you're doing detail work like this, and especially with acrylic, it's not something, if you're having to worry about overspray, then you're spraying too much material through your airbrush. Okay, airbrush is just made for like detail work. Now you can go ahead and paint kits and stuff with an airbrush, but what we're looking here is just real low pressure, just something to give just a little bit of an effect with. So let me go ahead and do this, and what I want to do is just give it just a touch of haziness over the top. Okay, and you can see right there, it just kind of killed the color down. It's just giving it a little bit of a fog onto it, and a little bit around the edges. You notice I'm just painting it in my hand. Now, you might not want to do it this way. You might want to put it on something. I got old habits; they're hard to break. So I'm just going to hit it lightly, like so. Nice thing about acrylics also is they dry really fast. So let's see here. Just kind of get one of those. Now I'm going to let this sit just a little bit, let it flash off, and then we'll see where we're at. So I'm going to go ahead and keep on playing around with this, and when we come back, we'll see what this thing looks like. Okay, so there we go. You can just see how it has kind of a light mist over the whole entire car. So yeah, cool effect. Now, let's go ahead and let's pull our masking. I should probably wait, but you know, again, impatient. So let's see here. Get it in the back side, and we'll just go ahead and unmask this like so. All right, almost got it there. And oh, come on, masking. And there we go. So you can see how the windshield has a little bit of fogging just around the edges. Now, the side glass we're looking at, what I do is just damp it just a little bit, and with the Q-tip, and we can come in and just kind of rub this a little bit. And what this will do is just kind of mimic, you know, where they, you know, just kind of cleaned off the glass. So it's going to take that, rub it on here like so. And that way it's not perfect, you know, it has like imperfections in it. And there. So now we have this portion of it all complete. Now we need to do, besides putting it all back together, but there's that, is we have some wheels that we need to go ahead and make a lot uglier than what they are here. So what I'm going to do, okay, those are staying in there, aren't they? Yes, they are. All right, so I'm going to take, I'm going to take off the tires. So we're going to take the tires off. I don't know if I want to have weathered tires on the outside. So maybe it just went into the pits and got a new pair of shoes on it. So right now I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I like these tires the way they have the Goodyear and stuff on them. I might just do those by hand. So here we go. It's on the chassis. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use the same mixture on the airbrush. And we're just going to go ahead and hit it right here in the middle. Let's get this out of the way. Let's move this over here. And now we'll just go ahead and hit this ever so slightly. Might actually turn up my air just a skosh. Whoop, wrong way. There we go. Now, so now we got this, and I'm just gonna hit it with this a little bit, and I'm gonna come back with some black actually. So right now what I want to do is just kind of tone it down. Okay, so I'm using this to tone it down like that. I'm gonna let that sit and probably give it one more coat, and then we'll come back with a little bit of black. Okay, so what I did was just add a little black directly to my mixture that I already had with the brown. That way it'll make it a little bit thicker and it'll, you know, cover a little bit better. So now what I want to do is just come in very lightly and just hit these wheels so they got that brake dust grime on them. And there we go. So there are our wheels. Still a little bit of a tinge of yellow in there, but they got a lot of grime. So I'll go ahead and set that there. You know what I was thinking? Yeah, I need to hit these too. So what I'm gonna do is just come right over the top of the Goodyear. So with the black that I have, and I'm just gonna come over the top of it like so, and just give it kind of a little bit of a kind of a grimy look to it. So there's one tire down, and we'll hit this guy just like that. And there's him. I got 2 more to go. So there it is, all nice and bright. Right, see if you can see it. There it goes. So right there. And then we're just gonna go ahead and tone it down a little bit, just like so. All right, so I got 1 more tire, and then I just gotta let everything dry, and we'll put it back together. All right, so there it is, all put together, and it looks pretty cool. I mean, look what it originally looked like to what we have now, and wow, what a difference. So let me go ahead and I'll just kind of turn it around for you. And let's see here. You can see the body damage on the side here where it's down below. You can see over here on that one where it's all nice and straight. So yeah, it's subtle, but it's there, you know, just like the actual car. So, and then in the back, we've got a little bit of weathering as far as the rear structure. And if we look underneath the spoiler, you can see the dark spots there. If we come over on the back side, there's that, and that one right there. It's amazing how that pinstriping really turns out nice as far as looking like duct tape. I mean, it's pretty wild. So here is, let's see here. Maybe we can get a better look at this side. So if we, let's see here. Let me move this guy over here, and we can see that front corner where it's damaged. So come on, get in, get the guide in the slot, Boone. There we go. All right, so there's that corner. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty cool. So there we go. And if we get right up on it, I mean, looks like duct tape. That's cool, the way it looks like duct tape. And you can see how that airbrushing, how it just kind of dulled down the surface and just kind of dyed it down. It looks like, you know, it looks like it's been on the track for 24 hours. So the wheels are all kind of tarnished and weathered. So yeah, and then you can see the interior there as well, and the way that shadowing on the front windshield. So there we go. All right. So now that we got that, well, we need to wrap up this video, don't we? All right. So we come back. Let's start wrapping it up. right, so there we go. Another video complete. And built something pretty epic. It's pretty cool. I keep on looking at it. It's like, that is really, really cool. So if you like this video, like it, share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I mean, and if you like this, leave me a comment. I mean, this video is a lot different than my normal videos. And tell you what, building the car didn't take nearly as long as doing the clip at the beginning as far as the history of this car. I wish that took as much time or as little bit of time as it did to actually do the build on the car. But yeah, voiceovers they take some time. So yeah, so cool, right? Well, there we go. Now, if you like this, if you like this type of content, let me know in the comments, and I'm sure I can drum up something else. I've got a lot of different ideas kind of banging around in this head. Yeah, there's a lot of ideas in there. So yeah, very cool. And special thanks to Alan from 123slotcar.us again for supplying me with these cars. I mean, I purchased them, but yeah, I was kind of sweating it that I may not be able to grab one of these. And when I found out that I could grab two of them, that was cool, because if I only had one, oh, it would be hard to go ahead and do what I did, because this is such a cool car. But you know, it's pretty epic. So if you're at a club or something like that, and you have one of your buddies and they're running one of these, and you don't want to run the same, well, you could do this to it, and it stands out quite a bit different. So yeah, just an idea, right? So I just thought I'd throw that out there. So there we go. Now, with all that, we still have the Facebook group and the Instagram group, and we got the Buy Me a Coffee app, and we have the Patreon group. So come on over, check out this stuff. Everything else is really cool, right? And on top of all that, we have merchandise too. So we got the Boone Slot Car Garage merchandise, and you can get that over there at Conquest Lair. So go over there, check it out, get yourself some merch, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right. So next time on Boone's Slot Car Garage, yeah, I got a couple ideas clicking around in the old noggin. So yeah, but we'll figure it out, right? Okay. I'll see you guys then. Hi, this is Boone Slot Car Garage. Let's do this.